Okay, sister, we are live. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for a series in regards. Today is our 7th episode. We're having a blast with these quick chats about movement and life. Today, I'm joined by my good friend Sheila, and we're going to talk about alignment.
My favorite subject.
Yes! Sheila is the owner and operator of Body Center St. Pete. She's also a longtime yoga and Pilates instructor, former professional dancer. She knows a lot about the body and has spent a good deal of time thinking about alignment. And today we're going to talk about alignment, not specifically like necessarily all just physical alignment, but also bigger ideas around alignment. But we'll start with just really simply, like when we say alignment, what does that mean? So like, Sheila, do you want to just say to us, like, what do we mean when we say alignment?
So when I think about physical alignment, what runs through my head is really finding the most efficient way to be. And then I always have the picture of the Leaning Tower of Pisa in my mind, because obviously that building, there's something going on with the foundation. And I always picture scaffolding if we are not in that place of ease. And that scaffolding is excess tight tissue and tight fascia that is spending way more energy holding us up than necessary. So if we can consider alignment to be our most efficient way of being physically, I think that works for me. But then when I break it down further, it has to do with congruency of joints. Again, back to that scaffolding and Leaning Tower of Pisa. Because when the joint is congruent, there is no muscle pulling it into any other action. Therefore, it is the most efficient place for that joint to be, because extra energy isn't being utilized to hold that joint in place. Sorry.
Okay, so for our friends at home who don't know what that means for a joint to be congruent, can you just define that term before we move on?
Sure. If you imagine a joint, let's just use ball and socket as an example, like our leg, to be almost like a puzzle piece. So the ball is the male end of the puzzle piece and the socket is the female end, so to speak. And well, that's what they use in construction. And so what you want is you want it to fit together the way we were designed, the way it was designed to fit in the socket without an action. So that would be neutral. That's like essentially neutrality of the joint. So seating it in the socket in a neutral way, as opposed to if I bend my knee forward like I'm marching, then a set of muscles are pulling the joint into a different shape. So just neutral joint congruency is like the puzzle pieces are just fitting together, and we're not asking it to make an action. Neutral.
Love it. So like just some definitions of, I always just kind of like to look up like general definitions of the terms before I hop on and go live. And some of the things that I read about alignment were like arrangement in a straight line, or a correct and appropriate relative position. So that's like one definition. But then there's also this idea of that it's like a position of agreement, or a position of alliance, or like a place where cooperation becomes possible. And I think that's a really interesting concept to explore. And I'd love to
I love that
way.
I love that, because it takes the entire body into perspective, which that's essentially, you can't operate any one part of the body alone in a vacuum. When you change one thing, you're changing the whole. So I really like that definition.
You've been in the yoga world for a long time, and so have I. And so we both know that there at least used to be, and in some, maybe in some groups or some teachings, it still is like a lot of dogma around alignment. Like in my teacher training, for example, and there was so much awesome in my teacher training, I'm totally not poo-pooing it. But in my teacher training, for example, we learned like very specific angle directions for the feet to face, and that like heels should be in line in Warrior One, for example, and the back foot is at 60 degrees. And I feel like we're really starting to move away from that. And so I'd love to hear you like speak about like the difference between like cueing a position and its angles, and like kind of cueing more generally to help people get into an alignment that makes sense for them. So Sheila's just frozen for a second. So I'll just talk a little bit about like some of my feelings about that. So it used to be that we would learn to cue like back foot to 60 degrees, front foot facing forward, heels in line. This is just an example of some of the old Warrior One dogmas. But as we learn and grow, we're just realizing that that doesn't always necessarily work for every single body. And so we've been starting to learn as movement teachers different ways to cue to get people to be able to find their own alignment and find alignments that make sense for them. That doesn't necessarily mean plugging your foot into specific angles necessarily, but instead talks about like the feeling. So instead of saying, hey, we want you to turn your foot to a super specific angle, we might say, feel your foot, ground your feet down. So Sheila, I just kind of started like spitballing about different ways of cueing and like why it might not work to tell a group of people, put your foot at 60 degrees, and what are some other ways that we can cue? Like, why is that kind of alignment moving out of fashion? And like, what are some kind of new things that are happening that are exciting, that ways we really like to teach now?
So if you look at, just look at each other's faces, the variation we have on sizes and shapes, and you know, we all look different. So just consider that as an example of your entire body. We are not the same as our neighbor, although we, you know, it's like we are and we aren't, and that gets into more kind of I guess a deeper way of looking at it, but really we are unique. We have unique angles, we have unique sizes, we have unique depths and shallowness, and every three-dimensional way you can, yes, femur angle, the cup of the, yeah, if we go back to the example that we use, the ball and the socket. So I might have a neck of my femur that might be a little curved, you know, so that might do something as opposed to a straighter neck, as opposed to a deep socket, as opposed to a very shallow socket. So we're all going to be able to accomplish range of motion based on our bones and how they are congruent. And that's going to be as different as all of our faces. So to say, put your foot out at 60 degrees or 30 degrees, it's going to recruit different muscles from one person than it will for another. So not knowing where that person is coming from is, I think that, well, that's the challenge, right? So that's what we're talking about, like in a group class, you know, cueing for an entire room of people, but not really knowing where they're all coming from, who had the car accidents, who had, you know, who had the emotional trauma that also affects alignment, who had, you know, all kinds of things, the habitual stuff, the repetitive motion, the job, that who was the professional this or that made their bodies shaped the way they are over time. So when you're looking at yourself on a grid and you just say, okay, it's always going to be 45 or it's always going to be 30, or, you know, or the angles, or it's just, I've learned over the years to never say never or never say always, because, and then going along with that is that our cueing cannot necessarily be like, we are always going to do this for everyone, because we're so unique and so different, and all of our angles and all of our shapes and all of our pockets of space in our joints come from this scrapbook of our life. Everything we've ever done is in our tissues, and it's like a scrap. Our bodies are scrapbook. So when we come to the table or come to a class, we're coming with a different scrapbook. So one cue to put your leg a certain way is going to do different things to the body for this person versus that person.
So if we want everybody to kind of get some similar feelings in the room, like what might we cue instead? If we, let's just stick with the feet since we're talking about angles of the feet. How can we then cue the feet in a way that will kind of get everybody on a little bit of the same page, even if it's their own page of their own scrapbook? It's like the same like chapter for all of us or whatever. I don't know. I'm trying to extend the metaphor maybe poorly, but you know what I mean?
It seems to be the kind of the way things, I'm observing and changing with the times as well. And it seems to work when you go into an exploration mode. Mm-hmm. So tuning in and exploring one end of the range and the other end of the range and feeling what one end feels like versus the other and sensing, do I have pain? Do I have discomfort? Do I have a sense of that relaxation, that kind of clicking into place, that neutrality? Can I relax in it? Is my breath starting to change? So when we tune in, we're going to get all the signals we actually need from our own bodies, which is like, there's where the inner teacher is. It really is, so we have our outside teachers and our mirrors and our mentors and things to show us where we are, which is extremely helpful. But when you're in exploration mode, it's all about what you're sensing. And it's not comparing your body to the next person's body. It's comparing your sense to kind of like in relation to other things in your own body. So it brings it all internal. And I think that's one approach. I mean, it's certainly not the only approach, but it seems to be the trend, and it seems to work really well for people in all industries in movement that are working with alignment. Just this explorative, exploratory, that's the word, exploratory place. And it really requires tuning into that parasympathetic, that like rest and digest, like let's slow down, turn off the monkey mind, not analyze, and feel. So it seems the way to go.
I love that so much. Of course, that's very much our passion at Body Electric, is to like get people into that tuned in feeling space so they can explore for this. So they have enough, so they're calm enough and they have enough wherewithal, so to speak, to go in and feel those things for themselves. And this is obviously like totally a yogic concept of svadhyaya, and it's like where the yoga becomes all of our own personal science. And why, again, it's so important that rest and digest and being able to shift yourself into parasympathetic, even when you're on purpose, maybe ramping up sympathetic, like by working out, for example, so that you can make observations and make good choices. I love that so much. And again, with the goal of being efficient and finding the alignment that helps you feel efficient and neutral. And
yeah.
Again, you'll feel those feelings that you feel in neutral, which are kind of stacked up, like things are in place. Like it's a feeling.
It's a feeling.
Hard to guide people there. And that's why I think in the past we've been dogmatic about alignment, because it's easier to control a crowd with like really strict rules. And that's why other terrible things happen in society. And it's much messier to do this exploratory way. And it requires a lot more personal responsibility on the part of the practitioner, but it is really serving like a much deeper, richer purpose.
Absolutely. And I want to go back a little because there's one more thing that I think is important to the exploration, and that is to slow down a little. Because I feel like we miss so much when we're just moving through. But when you stop and slow down and really feel where your body sways and what sensation it gives you through a slow motion, you're going to get a lot more feedback. You're going to get a lot more information coming into your nervous system than when you plow through it and go super quickly. You're kind of missing the information. You just kind of, that time just like gets you right out of that, like, let's soak in what's actually happening. So I just wanted to add that. I think that's important when you're working with like retraining, and when I'm saying retraining, I'm talking about myself. I just started retraining my gait. So I'm literally walking in slow motion all the time. And when I walk fast, I can't apply the things that I'm trying to correct. And when I'm walking slow, I actually feel, oh, I'm wavering on my foot at that moment of the gait cycle. You can't feel that when you're walking normal pace. So same thing in our yoga practice, like try going into warrior 3 in slow motion. You'll really feel, rather than like, let's just get there and stick it. You know, you really feel the pathway of like, maybe it's the pathway that makes that pose difficult, not the actual pose itself. So it's just an interesting another avenue to help define what, you know, that place to feel alignment, you know, just slowing down.
That's so good and so rich. And it's particularly important when you're trying to rehabituate, as you said. And we talked about habit last week with Elizabeth. Y'all, if you haven't listened to that episode, get in there. It's really great. And habits, again, are something that help us to be efficient, and they can be fine. Yeah. You know, we don't want to totally throw habits out. Habits can be great, like brushing your teeth when you wake up in the morning or whatever. But it's when you've now, because you're being observant, because you're in that svadhyaya, you're living an analyzed life, right? That you see some habits are no longer serving you. Well, if you're going so fast, you're going to automatically slip into those habits. So just to take time, you don't have to always go super slow, right? But it's important to do sometimes. And I love that so much. And I love to mix that up in my own movement practices. Sometimes I rhyme quick. Sometimes I forget the rhyme. Fuck shit. Oh, that's beautiful. So another like thing we can talk about is like aligning our whole movement like let's just like shift out of like the physical space, and I think things will relate back to that and we'll touch on it again, I'm sure. But let's also talk about like alignment can also mean aligning yourself with like beliefs or purposes or goals, or people will say align with intention. And so I thought it'd be kind of interesting to dig into that a little bit as well in our conversation. Like, we're not necessarily just aligning a shape in our body. There's also, well, like, why?
Right. And that goes, I'm sorry, I'm plugging in my phone. That goes into a category of energetic alignment. And that's, I think I truly believe with all of my heart that all physical alignment begins with energetic alignment. And it could be energetic alignment within yourself, within your energy centers, or it could be energetic alignment, like you mentioned, how you tune in to a subject matter, like how you connect to something else out there. And I can't help but think of vibration when I'm talking about energetic alignment. And certainly I know everyone's felt it when you feel like a tuning fork and there's something else that's playing the exact same note and you just vibrate with it. And to me, that's when you are aligned with something. You vibrate at the same frequency. And then when you take that internally within your own energy centers, the same thing. So you might have, for instance, like a sleepy energy center, let's say. This goes into some chakra work, which is not my expertise, but yeah, so how do these energy centers align within their relationships to each other and then relationship to your physical body, you know, so like within our own little capsule, so to speak. So just like the physical alignment, you know, there's, you know, how we tune in, with reference to just ourselves or with reference to what's out there. And, you know, it's good to look at both, but truly tuning in is giving you and your teacher the chance to really give you answers.
So good.
So good.
Another like tool that I've heard people talk about when it comes to like alignment, whether it be like your own physical alignment or aligning with intention, or like you're saying, finding your frequency, aligning with the other things that are vibrating on your same frequency. Svadhyaya, which is what we kind of keep coming back to, that like tuning in, going in, self-discovery. totally. And I've also heard people mention in the same category of tools, bhavana, which is in yoga land, visualization. So is that something that, and there are some questions coming in the feed, a lot of other people seem to be wanting to retrain their gait, and they want to hear about how you're doing it. And
Yes.
of course, you guys need to know that if you haven't already gone to Body Center St. Pete, that's what it's all about. You need to go work with Shila because she's a savant. She's like a genius and she's obsessed. She's going to help you solve your problem.
I'm obsessed. I really am.
That's why she's in the car driving home. She can't stop working. She loves what she does so much, like we do. And so I'd love to like hear what you have to say about visualization and how that can work for us as well.
Visualization is powerful. And I work in the physical realm, but I'm also very interested in the energetic and spiritual realms, and powerful on both fronts. So there are studies that show when you visualize, for instance, playing the piano or practicing playing the piano, the muscles that fire up when you play actually show in the electrodes. So just, and there are tons of studies that show that with sports and various activities. So just visualizing in your mind, you start firing things in your body that you're not even aware of. So your nervous system doesn't really even know what's real and what's not. So, so if you just imagine A, B, C, whatever it is, you're already partway there. Even if it seems so far-fetched, it's already starting to like give messages to your body and give messages to the universe to lay that out for you. So I'm, you know, and that's coming from a little bit more of a spiritual place. But then when you work on alignment through visualization, I think it's hugely important. And it's so important in the classroom. When you give just the right cue, I mean, we've all had those epiphanies. You get the right cue and all of a sudden it makes sense. And that often comes from a really, like a really nice metaphorical cue or something that's like just works. It's the poetic part of it or the way the words went. Somehow it finally got into your consciousness, even though you've heard this over and over and over. But somehow with the proper visualization, it just all makes sense. So I think it's hugely important to work with visualization, both physically and spiritually. Absolutely.
I love that. You said your nervous system doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not. And that the implications of that, when you just absorb that sentence, the implications of that are so powerful and influential. Like I feel influenced by that. Like that idea really motivates me to be careful with my thoughts, to be more mindful with my movements, because I want to be aligned. You know, I know where I want to be headed. So if my nervous system doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not, and I'm having these like, you know, negative thoughts or whatever the thoughts might be, or thinking in fact sentences, things about myself, I am stupid.
Right.
Like my nervous system doesn't know that I'm just kidding, that I'm just like having a moment or whatever. So I feel very motivated by that sentence to take my thoughts, actions, all of that, like a little more seriously. Absolutely.
I'm just thinking about, I'm sorry, I'm really low battery mode and none of my plugs work. So, so that's why I
think we're going to make it.
I think we're going to make it. So that's why I'm running around plugging things in. But when you look at different manifestation teachers, they teach, all of them teach the same thing. You have to believe it's already there. If you tell the universe, I wish blank, you're telling the universe, I don't have it. But if you tell the universe, I am blank, you're telling the universe you're already there, and it's going to start sprinkling in all the open doorways and all this coincidences to allow it to happen. But if you know, it's just those words and the imagery, and it goes in the same category. It's the atmosphere you put out. They're powerful. That's when they say the mind is powerful, essentially.
So true. All right, guys, before we wrap up, I want to just throw it out. Do you have any questions? Yes, Allison Parker. on the dot. In the non-asana realm, so outside of asana, is a misalignment ever conducive to us and our growth? Like, what, maybe it's okay.
Yes. I'm going to say yes. Just like the biggest lessons come from our big falls in life. You fall down and you get back up. Then, you know, same thing with us learning about alignment. I mean, I think the biggest alignment lessons for me were actual injuries. So, you know, something that initially looks like something bad is, you know how the universe is. It's often a gift. And same thing with our body. So in my own body, I didn't get a chance to talk to Caitlin before the interview, but I don't wear my leg length lift anymore. I've trained my body out of it, something that apparently wasn't possible based on everything I was trained in. So when you open up to what's possible and kind of get out of this closed-minded, whatever power your brain has, and just open up and tune into alignment, physical and spiritual, energetic, however you want to look at it. You can move mountains. I fully, firmly believe it. I don't know if I'm answering that. What was the question exactly? I don't think I'm answering it.
Can a misalignment or a disalignment ever be conducive to us and our growth? And I think you answered it perfectly.
Absolutely. Yeah. So all of my injuries, this leg length difference that I thought I have that I ended up not having, I mean, huge lessons for me. And without all of these quote unquote mistakes or whatever you want to call it, I would have never come this far. So I think these things that we usually consider bad are all gifts. They're all just gifts for learning.
I agree. And I would just add to that though, that you have to look for that. That doesn't always just present itself to you, that especially like with injuries and things, like, again, that goes back to the, like, you know, carefully choosing your thoughts and how you respond to things. Like, you can look for the lessons. You will kind of end up vibing with whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for it to be a disaster, well, it can be. If you're looking for it to be a gift or a lesson, it also can be. So that your intention also matters.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, I'll just check and see if there's any more questions. That was so great. Here's Monica. Monica often wonders if she's not following the right alignment for a pose, if the pose will still produce the benefits. Certain alignment must be important for a pose to be that pose, or it can be another pose. Monica is also from a dance background like you, Sheila, so she has a really hard time thinking about postures being fluid. What can we say to her to help motivate her? And I want to just first say, Monica, like, of course, like, triangle is triangle. It's going to be sort of like a triangle looking shape. But like I was saying in the beginning of the talk, in my yoga teacher training, that doesn't mean that every person's triangle back foot needs to be at 60 degrees or 45 degrees or whatever you learned in your teacher training, right? All of our triangles can all look like triangles, but just very slightly different triangles. What would you care to add?
Oh my God. It is a different triangle every time you do it, whether you try to do it the same or not. Just how you're breathing that day, what your makeup is, what you dreamt about the night before. Like, it's a different pose every time you do it. So that maybe can relax things a little bit for everyone in terms of alignment, because we're just meeting our bodies at that very moment that we're physically doing the pose. So say you get into a pose and you start to self-correct, there are thousands of options in a tiny millimeter of space, thousands. So, I mean, these are all just learning opportunities. These are learning vectors that we can just say, what about a little bit here? What does that give me? What about a little bit here? What does that give me? This is all what we're here for, is just to learn and discover. So I think that might help some people relax a little bit, that no, there's really no perfect. I mean, or there is, once again, it's like that's the bigger way to put it. We are all perfect, but there's no, like,
we're either all perfect or we're all not.
Exactly. But nothing in between. So there's really no striving for this one thing. And I hope that, like, helps people have a little more ease when they're going into these explorations. And I feel that way about life. When you come to a fork in the road, it's not like, oh my God, if I choose the wrong path, my life is just screwed. No, you choose this path and your life then reorganizes around that. And that really was the right path. So, you know, so it's really all an exploration. And like Caitlin said, it's about looking for it. So if you're going in unconsciously, you won't get those lessons and those little nuggets of feelings and inspirations, and you're not connecting. But if you go in consciously with awareness, there's gifts everywhere, lessons everywhere.
And you'll definitely find those teachers out there, guys, who are happy to tell you to put your foot at this exact angle and to do XYZ exactly this. And what they really are looking for from you is like your obedience. And you can find that. And if that's like simpler and easier for you, like bless, we all are where we are. It, like we said again in the beginning of the discussion, it's a lot messier to do it this way, but also so much more rewarding. What it is, it's giving you freedom to see for yourself and to find for yourself your alignment, knowing that there's no way yours could be the same as mine, because literally our bones have developed differently over our lives. Like, and then so have our muscles and our fascia. And so our whole scrapbooks, our whole bodies that are made up of our own memories, movement, habits, all of those things are so unique that no teacher of a group could ever give each of you exactly what you need. Only you can. Yes. And it takes big balls as a teacher up here in the front of the room to admit that. Yeah. I don't know what's best for you. You have to go in and find it. I'm holding space for you though. And that's really what we do. And but with that freedom, again, comes this like responsibility. You got to do the work. You got to show up to the work. And we all like to show up sometimes and check out and just do everything the teacher says. And like, that's fine. But, you know, if you're really trying to make changes, grow, evolve, etc., you really got to do the work. There's just no way around it.
And there's something to be said about checking out and just moving, you know, even within that, you know, there's something you can learn, right? It's sometimes, so I've been playing around with Gyro Tonics recently, and it's just been really fun to have a new modality in my body. And of course, I'm so analytical, and my instructor, who's excellent, she keeps, I'll say, well, wait a minute, this is the side that I need to do this, this, and this. And wait, but this is the side I need to do. And she's like, turn off that brain and just move. And that lesson is, it's actually been really helpful for me to just turn this off and just see what the divine intelligence of my body presents. But I still have to be the observer. So even if you check out and go for the ride, you know, you still have to be the observer. Just that bit of consciousness is still, that's our yoga. That's our yoga, basically. So, I mean, I think in a nutshell, we're basically saying there's no wrong. There's just no wrong. This is all an exploration. Even if you injure yourself, and we could say, oh, well, that was wrong. Your knee wasn't over your second toe or whatever. But that was an exploration. You learned something there. You know, unfortunately, you might have to heal and whatever. But big lessons in injuries, like huge lessons in injuries.
Yeah, so true. That's so good. And on a personal note, I'm so happy that you have somebody holding space for you in that way with the Gyro Tonics. That's so awesome. We all need
it's
that.
A really cool technique. It's not very prevalent here in this town, but it's a really, really, really cool technique to let your spine just constantly unfurl, just like in the womb, over and over. It's really cool. Yeah.
I look forward to when you're feeling ready to share that with us.
Awesome.
Oh, well, listen, everybody, what a great talk. I feel like I could talk to Shila all day long, and I will definitely be asking you back on the show. Lots of repeat. You guys are going to just see repeat guests. You're going to get to know us. This is really about us connecting with you guys, our people, the people who practice with us. We don't always get to have big, long conversations in the studio, and less these days, of course, as we try to practice social distancing and respect each other's safety. And so this is our way to connect and talk with you. And some of us really like to analyze things and talk about big ideas. I hope that it is serving you. Again, look back at last week, alignment with Elizabeth Markey, or habit with Elizabeth Markey. I feel like so much of the stuff overlaps. Intention with Rachel, all these conversations, they all flow together. They're all building on each other. We'll be circling back, so keep paying attention. Next week, not at 4 o'clock, but at 5:30 p.m. I'll be joined by our business coach, the Body Electrics business coach, Juliet Kais from Action Coach Tampa Bay, and we're going to be talking about mindset. I think you guys will see again that everything's going to all tie together really beautifully. I'm having such a blast having these talks. Sheila, you're so busy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm running around like in the background. Sorry it wasn't very still, but this was wonderful. I could do this all day. I could chat with you all day, Caitlin.
Let's do it again soon. I love you so much.
Love you too.
People, we'll talk to you guys soon.